Thanks for staying with us on the South Australian Sports Show. Time to turn our attention probably to the footy tipping. Just quickly, how have you been going?
I've been going terrible. You know, for a number of years, I've always been beaten by the cleaning lady where I work, and it just really, I'm supposed to be the...
What, the cleaning lady?
You know what? I just can't get close. There was one, this is seriously, 1 week where I circled 9 teams. Now, usually I circle them and they're my winning teams, right?
Yep.
I got 0. So I tried to tell them that now I was circling the teams that I thought would lose.
Right, how'd that go for you?
How do you get 0 out of 9? How do you get 0? Getting 0 out of 9 is just as hard, 100%. As getting 9 out of 9 winners.
All right, let's go to someone that might be able to help us out. Dave joins us from the Brighton Jetty Bakery. Dave, how are you?
Very well, thanks, gentlemen. Yourselves?
Yeah, good pie eating weather. Good pie eating weather.
It certainly is, mate. We've been absolutely blessed with this last week of June. I don't believe it's winter yet, but I think it's going to hit pretty soon.
What's the big seller at the Brighton Bakery this last couple of weeks, mate? The cold weather, what peaks?
Sausage rolls. Can't go past a good sausage roll.
I love
Stock
a good
standard,
sausage roll.
but when they're done well, executed correctly, a sausage roll is hard to beat.
So the advice on this for the viewers is tip what Dave says and disregard anything Poppy says.
Last time you were here, 6 out of 9.
6 out of 9.
If you can get 6 again this week,
I'm doing all right.
Throw the joker in and that could be a 12. All right, let's talk about it. North Melbourne up against Hawthorn, first playing 5th. North Melbourne, a win and a loss coming in. The Hawks have won their last 3. Friday night, big game, Eddie.
Huge game at Friday night footy. I think it's going to be the Hawks this week.
Ooh.
I just think that the veteran presence out at Hawthorn is going to carry him over the line. North a bit shaky the last few weeks.
Yeah, you know what? I keep on waiting for North to fall over. I'm hoping they fall over next week if it's not this week because they've got the Crows next week. Look, it's a tough game. I'm going to stick with North Melbourne just for this week. Let them win this week and not come to see the Crows off a rebound. That's my theory.
All right, Saturday, Brisbane are in 17th. They're up against West Coast in 8th. They're at the Gabba. Brisbane are going on their last 3. They've lost their last 3. They've lost just about everyone. West Coast have had a win and then 2 losses, so both not in good form.
No, it's an absolute shambles.
Nick Natanui, of course, is out for West
True, but still an absolute shambles up in Brisbane. I think Lepich is not sleeping too well at night. I'm going to have to say West Coast.
He needs a good sausage roll, that bloke.
Well, doesn't everyone?
West Coast for you, mate. What is it for you?
Yeah, West Coast.
Freo are 16th, and they're starting to show a little bit. They're coming in off 2 wins. Play the Power in 9th that have had 2 wins and then a loss at Domain.
Yeah, but speaking of ordinary opponents, Freo's last 2 wins are against Essendon and Brisbane, who are languishing down the bottom there, and Port are going to be hungry, I think, after getting close against the Dogs.
Not a good game.
So,
a good game.
Yeah.
Beauty.
I reckon Port Adelaide going to get up.
Port Adelaide, all right. The Bullies, 3 wins in 4th spot. Geelong in 2nd. A lot of people saying this may define the team that plays in the grand final. I think it's a bit early for that. Doggies or Geelong?
I'm going with the Cats this week. I think Dangerfield's probably playing some of the best footy we've ever seen from him, and that's saying something because he's had a strong last 10 years. And
just a lazy 48
touches.
Yeah,
nearly 50 touches last week. I think Cats are going to get it done.
Cats.
Yeah, right. I tend to agree. The Western Bulldogs, again, but they're a little bit like the Kangaroos with me. They play good football, but they just haven't... they're just not in my psyche as a team that's made it just yet.
All right, Sydney are in 3rd spot. They're up against Melbourne in 10th spot. It's at the SCG.
Sydney for sure. Too tough at Sydney.
Oh, okay. Essendon sitting in 18th spot with lovely 3 losses.
I don't even know who they need to play.
GWS in 6th spot at Etihad.
Surely got to go with GWS.
Yeah.
I think
GWS.
Essendon might struggle against training cones at the moment, but
they could too, yeah.
I want to ask you quickly: Adelaide, Richmond, Carlton, Gold Coast, St Kilda, Collingwood have the bye this weekend. Do you like the bye weekend? Goes over 3 weeks.
No, I don't like a 3 week. I don't like 3 weeks.
I think it's difficult. I think it makes it really tough to keep that rhythm going, especially if you're coming off, like the Crows in West Coast, a good win, keeping the Eagles scoreless, and then you've got to come back in 3 weeks and try and get it all together again. Time on the training track sometimes ends up biting in the arse.
All right, Dave, appreciate you coming in. If you need some good tucker, get down to the Brighton Jetty Bakery. We need to take a break. Stay with us. Still a fair bit to come. Well, Poppy, this is the bit where I like to get lots of your opinions about lots of different things. But let's start with the Hall of Fame, AFL Hall of Fame, of course. 6 new inductees, 2 from South Australia, Paul Bagshaw and Ben Hart. Let's start with Paul Bagshaw. Now, Rick Davies said one of the greatest South Australian players to play the game and certainly one of the greatest Sturt players ever. Mr Magic, of course, 360 games for Sturt between 64 and 80, and he played in 7 premierships. Wow. So he's got an amazing record.
Yeah.
Rick Davies, one of the greatest ever. Now, I'm going to throw a couple of names at you.
Yes, go on.
Because it's always hard to say, why isn't he the greatest? Rick Davies.
Yes.
Greg Whittlesey, Len Fitzgerald,
yes.
Bob Sheeman, Paul Bagshaw. Could you pick one out of there to say they were the greatest?
Oh,
or not?
Well, it would be tough, wouldn't it? I mean, I played in the same team as Greg Whittlesey, great player, Magarey medalist in 1988. I'm not sure that he ever got a premiership. Rick Davies, leading goal kicker, a handful of times plus, unbelievably gifted player. Some of those players you mentioned, Len Fitzgerald, fantastic, Bobby Shearman. But Paul Bagshaw, I've only ever seen video of him, and he looked like he played ahead of his time. You know, when you look at old vision sometimes and players don't seem to have the skills of a modern day player, left side, right side, handball, but he moved like he was playing today, rather than when he did a handful of decades ago. So he was a man ahead of his time in my way of thinking.
All right, let me ask you this thing. Would it be fair to say he was the greatest skilled player ever for the Sturt Footy Club?
I can't think of any just off the top of my head.
That was more skillful.
Yeah, well, no, I can't think of any just off the top of my head, but it's really hard to... It's like saying, how would a Barry Robran go today? How would a Rick Davies go today? It's hard to line up players over the era. So to pick a best player ever, I think it's a great, probably, survey for Sturt to have, and we've probably mentioned a handful of them now.
And I agree with that. Was he the greatest player in his era?
So
he's got some coming in as he's just going towards the end.
I think that recognition probably says he was at the Sturt Football Club. I think so. Look, he was brilliant, and I think what complemented his skills was the fact he's a gentleman.
Absolutely.
He was a gentleman, and I think everyone likes that part of
quietly
a sportsman
spoken
as well.
Yeah, very humble.
And I think that puts him above a lot of others.
All right, the next bloke certainly wasn't humble. Actually, he was, and he's a good friend. Benny Hart, of course, dual premiership player with the Crows. Mike Fitzpatrick actually called him. Now, when he called him, Ben thought he was in trouble. He thought he'd done something wrong. So he took the call.
He doesn't come across as a troublemaker.
No,
either.
he doesn't, but he took the call. He's dubious about what was happening, and he said he can't actually remember the conversation. He said it probably didn't go as well as it should have when you're being told you're going to be inducted into the AFL. But Mark Rasciuto rated him as the Crows' best defender ever. 311 games for the Crows from 92 to 2006. He was an All-Australian 4 times. This is the part that slips under the radar. He first debuted as a 17-year-old.
I remember.
And made All-Australian that year. One of the few that has debuted to become All-Australian. Has there been a better defender than Benny Hart?
And we've had some good ones. If you look at Nigel Smart and Rodney Maynard in the early days, Rod Jamieson, after he spent some time up forward, went back as a reliable defender. No, probably not. I mean, he was the most reliable, week in, week out, could play small, could play tall, didn't go to ground too much, take a big mark. He had some big jobs over the journey. Everyone from Tony Lockett to a small forward. He was a brilliant player, and in the Paul Bagshaw ilk, he was a gentleman and humble as well. Look, I had a lot of time for Benny. I haven't seen him for a number of years.
Saw him this year, assistant coach at Collingwood, of course. He's in charge of the defensive line, so it doesn't matter what.
He spends a bit of time down there.
Yeah, he does. So spending most of the time down there. But can you think of a better player? Let me ask you this. Could you think of a better defender from the Port Adelaide era? In that era. I mean, I immediately think of Greg Phillips. And I don't think there's been a better centre-half backman than anyone, but he was a little bit before Benny.
Yeah, but don't forget there was a Gavin Wanganeen that won a Brownlow medal as I think he was a back pocket player, that, albeit at the Bombers at the time. But look, running on the run, I can't think of too many players. And I think Port Adelaide would concede. You concede players at certain times. He would be up there for sure.
So it's fair to say he was one of the great South Australian defenders through his time.
Oh, for sure. Of all time.
All right. Mark Rasciuto said that he thought one of his great strengths was his ability to get the ball and break lines and send the Crows back into attack.
Yeah, and you know what? If you look at teams that are in form now, having that attribute is huge, being able to carry the ball. When Port are on song, their runners from the back half break lines. When Crows were on song, the premiership years, the most obvious examples, they had a handful of players that could run through lines, and he was certainly one of them.
All right, I asked Wayne Carey this. It was probably a stupid question to ask Wayne at the time, but I actually wanted to see what his answer was. A centre-half forward or a centre-half back?
He'd say centre-half forward.
Of course he did. But in your mind, which is the more pivotal role?
I think it's a pivotal contest. So within a game, that contest between centre-half back and centre-half forward is crucial. And it happens
so you couldn't pick one, could you?
Well, you couldn't because...
So there's my question. Why didn't he say you couldn't pick one when he said, of course, it's centre-half forward?
Yeah, because he's a centre-half forward. You know what centre-half forwards are like.
Just like the Duck, isn't it?
But you know what, though? It's funny. As much as maybe a full forward isn't as important as it once was, and we see that in the amount of 100 seasoned goal kickers, almost a dying breed these days. Having a key forward in that centre half forward position has remained important. The roles change somewhat. They might play up the ground a little bit, a la Rewalt. They might play a bit deeper, a la Taylor Walker. But having that key position go-to player as one of a group is still important.
Yeah, and there hasn't been a tag for. I like to call them rolling forwards because they roll in and out of positions. So they're more the rolling type forward. I want to ask you about this one. Ben Jarman, of course, the son of Darren Jarman, starting to get a little bit of attention.
I haven't seen him play yet, to be honest.
I've seen him play a couple of times. I just want to give you a quick hit. If you were a breeder of horses, you'd say, and you pay top dollar.
He'd be worth $2 million.
Okay, Darren Jarman played
and you'd keep him as a colt. You wouldn't geld him.
Okay, so Darren Jarman, 3 premierships, 3 All-Australian, 1 best and fairest, Adelaide Team of the Decade, 3 times leading goal scorer, 11 goals he scored for the Crows in 2 grand finals, 230 AFL games. He retired in 2001. He's played at the Crows and Hawthorn, so both clubs have a claim for father-son. Now, the Crows are yet to have their first ever father-son. They were close with Bryce Gibbs, but his dad Ross, they said, hadn't played enough games when it came in, which was worth arguing, but they didn't win it. So could Ben become the first player? Now, they said,
knowing him playing, breeding.
All right, he's playing exceptionally well in the SANFL.
North Adelaide,
This is the rating on him. They say that he's not quick, but no one can tackle him. He can't be brought to ground because his balance is beautiful. He's got wonderful skills. So they start talking
about him or Darren?
Well, that's what I'm saying. So when you start to read the scouting reports, he sounds like Diesel. He sounds like Darren Jarman. So if you put him in the AFL draft and you say we're going to time him on his sprints and we're going to time him on that, not going to come up A grade. He was one of South Australia's best when they played a couple of weeks ago in the under-18s against WA. So when the game's on, he's got all the skills. Could the Crows keep him if Hawthorn come to get him? Now, he's spoken with both clubs, I know that. If you were sitting in Ben's spot, and he's handling it beautifully, he's saying, I just want to play good footy at the moment. So he's not going anywhere. If you were an 18-year-old kid, Hawthorn are chasing you, Crows are chasing you, which way would you be leaning?
You know what? You'd lean the way your dad told you to lean. I think he would. So it'd be interesting to see which way he leans.
So Fudd will have the say.
Well, I think Fudd might.
I think Sue will.
And I guess I don't know whether he's paying board at home at the moment.
I'd go with what his mum said before I'd go with what...
Possibly. But, it's funny, Darren Jarman wasn't the quickest either, and you mentioned he didn't have a lot of speed. But, in his whole career, never got caught once holding the ball. He had an uncanny quality. He was one of the greats for sure.
Okay, this is what I like about Darren. We've got away from Ben, and I've argued with people lots of times. They say, I look too slow, I look too this. My argument is, I said, he always looked like he had time. Whenever the ball came, whatever was happening around him, always had the gift. And I think people misinterpreted that and saying, I reckon he's slow and lazy. So I don't think he's at all. I think he's got a gift where he's able to put the game into slow motion and see things unfolding ahead of time before other people can do it. So, he didn't look like he got to the ball as hard as he should have.
Agreed.
He didn't need to because he knew where the ball was coming, so he could get it when it came to him.
Some people chase the ball and some people go to where the ball's going to be.
Well, he got it in both instances. So he had the ability to do both. Rio's 51 days away. Okay, so Friday we're 49 days away. Stadiums don't look like they're finished.
No.
Venues seem to be in disarray. Tickets are not selling well. All the stuff we normally hear about. Now, you've had an incident with tickets. Can you take us through?
Put it this way. When I went to Greece with my son in 2004, I paid premium price for tickets, got them no problems. There was still the apprehension about stadiums and everything being ready. It was fine.
All done, yep.
So, and that happens every Olympics almost. This year, I tried to secure tickets, Category A through to D, I think from memory it was. I can't get them come hell or high water. I've tried on 3 different occasions. It's $5,000 worth of tickets. You go into a ballot system. I've probably requested over a dozen different sports of tickets, a dozen different days. Not successful on one day at one time on 3 different ballots. So I've given up. So I'm not going this year.
And maybe a lot of people are doing the same.
Well, it might be. So it's one thing to say tickets aren't selling well, but it's another thing to being able to buy them. So there's a company that is the conduit, and they charge you premium price for their service. But I think what they're doing is trying to create a need for tickets to get premium price. Well, I've fallen away. I've lost interest.
All right, I
I'll be
reckon.
watching it on
Well,
TV.
a lot of people are saying the same thing, so I'm interested in that. So
Yeah.
sometimes you play a game and it backfires.
It does, yeah.
So, all right, time for us to go. Hope you've enjoyed the show, everybody. We'll look forward to your company next week. Bye for now.